After Christmas night, I woke up in an empty home. My family secretly went on a luxury vacation without me. Stay with me through this story, and if it moves you in any way, I'd love it if you could support by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with people you care about. My name is Naomi Ellis. I'm 22 years old, African American, and I've always been the kind of daughter who works hard, stays quiet, and tries not to cause any trouble. I spend my days working part-time at a cafe and studying whenever I can. Even though I do everything to be there for my family, they've always treated me like I don't quite belong. Christmas night had been warm and noisy, the kind of evening that looked perfect from the outside. I had saved up to buy thoughtful gifts for everyone. My mom Angela, my dad Marcus, my older brother Jamal, and my younger sister Layla. They smiled, said polite thank yous, and then quickly moved on. The gifts I received in return were half-hearted. Cheap perfume, socks, things that felt more like an obligation than love. Still, I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself, at least we're together. When the night wound down, I went to bed with the sound of their laughter still echoing through the house. For a moment, I felt lucky just to be part of that noise. But the next morning, the world felt different. I woke to silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. The house was cold, still, and strangely hollow. I checked the kitchen first, thinking maybe everyone had slept in. Instead, I found empty counters. The fridge, which had been stuffed the night before, was stripped bare. Leftovers gone. Snacks gone. Even the carton of milk. Confused, I moved from room to room. My parents' bedroom closet, half empty. Suitcases missing. Jamal's sneakers, the ones he never went anywhere without, gone from their usual spot by the door. Layla's hairdryer and bags had vanished too. Panic began to build in my chest. I grabbed my phone and tried calling my mom. No answer. I texted my dad. Nothing. I checked Jamal's location on social media, but his profile was suddenly private. One by one, every door closed in my face. Then, as I walked into the dining room, I saw it. A glossy travel brochure lying on the counter. My heart dropped before I even picked it up. It was for a Bahamas luxury resort, the kind you only see in commercials. My hands trembled as I flipped it open, and there it was. A printed reservation list with my family's names neatly typed. Marcus Ellis, Angela Ellis, Jamal Ellis, and Layla Ellis. Right beneath Layla's name, faintly visible, was mine. Naomi Ellis. But someone had taken a pen and scratched it out. In that moment, standing in the middle of the empty house, I felt smaller than I ever had before. Christmas night had ended with laughter. The next morning began with betrayal. I stood in the empty house with my phone in my hand, my heart racing as I dialed my mom's number. The line rang and rang until it went to voicemail. I tried my dad next, then Jamal, then Layla. Each time, silence. No answer, no explanation. I sent messages, short and desperate. Where are you? What's going on? Did you forget me? But the check marks never turned blue. At first, I told myself there had to be a mistake. Maybe they'd gone out for breakfast and forgot to wake me. Maybe there was some emergency I didn't know about. Families don't just leave someone behind like this, do they? I searched the house again, hoping for some sign that they'd be back. That's when my eyes drifted toward my mom's desk in the corner of the living room. The drawer was slightly open, as if it had been left in a rush. My stomach tightened. Slowly, I pulled it open and found a neatly folded packet of papers. I unfolded the first page, and my heart stopped. It was the travel itinerary, flights booked, hotel reservations, activities scheduled down to the hour. The dates matched perfectly. They had planned everything for months, and every single detail was there, except my name. Marcus Ellis, Angela Ellis, Jamal Ellis, Layla Ellis. I scanned the page 3 times, hoping I was wrong, but I wasn't there. I sank into the chair, clutching the paper like it might dissolve in my hands. My chest felt heavy, and it became hard to breathe. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. They had chosen to go without me. They had erased me. Flashes of memory hit me like sharp glass. The night in October when they all went out for dinner and told me later they thought I'd be too tired from work. The Sunday when I walked into the living room and they all went quiet, hiding their phones, as if I had interrupted a secret conversation. The laughter from Thanksgiving when I was stuck in the kitchen, cleaning dishes alone, while they toasted each other in the dining room. Each memory stitched itself into a pattern I hadn't wanted to see before. I wasn't part of their world. I was just someone they tolerated in the house. By the time the sun went down, the the silence of the house felt unbearable. I microwaved a plate of leftover ham and potatoes, carrying it to the table where we had laughed together just hours before. I ate slowly, each bite turning to dust in my mouth, while the memory of last night replayed in my head. The warmth, the chatter, the way I believed, just for a moment, that I belonged. Now, I sat in the same place, alone, staring at the empty chairs. My family was thousands of miles away, drinking cocktails in the Bahamas, while I chewed on cold leftovers. And that was the moment it hit me fully. They had chosen life without me. 2 days passed in silence before I finally worked up the courage to leave the house. I couldn't stand the walls closing in on me, the reminders of the laughter that had vanished overnight. I caught a bus across town to see the only person who had ever made me feel like family, my Aunt Dolores. She lived in a modest brick house with a small garden, nothing flashy, nothing loud. Just warmth. When she opened the door and saw me standing there with swollen eyes, she didn't ask questions. She simply pulled me into her arms and held me tight. For the first time since Christmas, I felt a sliver of comfort. She led me inside, made me tea, and sat across from me at her little kitchen table. I tried to smile, but my voice cracked as I asked, "Did you know? Did they tell you they were going?" Her eyes darted away, and that was all the answer I needed. My stomach dropped. Still, I pressed her. "Why, Annie? Why would they do this to me?" Dolores fidgeted with her hands, her lips trembling as if the truth was heavy on her tongue. Finally, she let out a long sigh. "Naomi, baby, they didn't want you there." I froze, my chest tightening. "Didn't want me? They say you don't fit in," she whispered, as though speaking the words might cut me deeper. "They call you too quiet, too plain. Said a luxury trip needed energy, fun, people who match their style. They think you'd just slow them down. A burden." The word sliced through me like a blade. Burden. That's what I was to my own parents. To my brother and sister. My head dropped into my hands, tears spilling uncontrollably. It wasn't just about a vacation anymore. This was how they truly saw me. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as dead weight. I shook with sobs, the kind that came from deep inside, the kind you can't stop once they start. "All I ever did was try to be good to them," I whispered. "I worked extra hours to buy them gifts. I stayed home when they needed me. I kept quiet so they wouldn't fight. And they erased me like I don't matter." Aunt Dolores leaned over, placing a steady hand on mine. Her voice was firm but kind. "Naomi, if you're going to cry, cry once. Let it out. But don't let them win by keeping you on the floor." I looked up at her through blurry eyes. "You hear me?" she continued. "Stand up. Show them you were never the weak one. Make them regret ever thinking you were nothing." Her words wrapped around me like armor. For the first time, beneath the hurt, I felt something else stir in my chest, a spark. A small, trembling spark of anger. Of strength. And I knew then that my story wasn't ending in that kitchen. It was only beginning. The ride back from Aunt Dolores's house was heavy, but my mind was no longer numb. Her words echoed inside me like a drumbeat. Cry once, then stand up. I had cried enough. Now it was time to move. I refused to let my family's betrayal define me. If they saw me as a burden, I would become something they could never ignore. The next morning, I walked into the cafe where I worked part-time and asked my manager for more hours. She raised an eyebrow, surprised, but nodded. From then on, I took every shift I could get, early mornings, late nights, weekends. I scrubbed tables, steamed lattes, and carried trays until my feet ached, but I didn't complain. Every dollar that hit my savings account felt like a step closer to freedom. Between shifts, I sat in the corner of the cafe with my laptop, researching law schools. It had always been a dream of mine, tucked away in the back of my mind like a secret treasure. Growing up, I had wanted to argue cases, to fight for people who had no one else to fight for them. But my parents always laughed at the idea. Law school? Too expensive. Too ambitious. That's not for someone like you, Naomi. Their words had buried my dream for years. Now, I dug it back up. I spent hours reading about scholarships, grants, and application essays. I ordered LSAT prep books online and studied late into the night, my lamp burning long after the rest of the neighborhood went dark. I built routines: work, study, save, sleep, repeat. It was exhausting, but it gave me purpose, something I had never truly felt before. Slowly, I began to notice a shift inside me. The bitterness that had weighed me down started to transform into quiet determination. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't even need their presence. For the first time, I wasn't chasing their love. I was building my own path, brick by brick. When my family finally came back from their vacation, tanned and glowing, their suitcases rolling through the door, I didn't rush to greet them. I didn't ask about their trip or pretend to care. Instead, I stayed in my room, headphones on, my books spread across the desk. My phone buzzed with their calls, their attempts to reach me, but I let it ring. Texts popped up on my screen, full of excuses and half-hearted explanations, but I left them unread. The silence became my weapon. No shouting, no begging, no tears, just silence. It unsettled them more than any outburst ever could. For once, I was the one choosing not to engage. Each night, as I counted the money I had saved and highlighted passages in my law prep books, I felt stronger. They had abandoned me, but I wasn't broken. I was preparing. And though they didn't know it yet, the girl they left behind on Christmas morning was gone. In her place was someone they would one day regret underestimating. When the front door swung open and the sound of rolling suitcases filled the hallway, I didn't rush out to greet them. I stayed seated at the small desk in my room, pen in hand, eyes focused on the notes spread across my textbook. From the corner of my eye, I caught glimpses of their reflections in the hallway mirror as they passed. Sunburned faces, flashy new clothes, the kind of glow that comes from days of cocktails and beachside photo shoots. "Naomi," my mom's voice rang out expectant, as though I should come running. I didn't. I simply underlined a line in my book and adjusted my chair. They piled into the living room, their voices rising in a chorus of bragging and laughter. I heard Jamal boast about jet skis, Layla squeal about the spa, and my dad chuckle about fine dining by the ocean. It was like they wanted me to overhear every detail, to feel the sting of exclusion. After a while, Mom called again, sharper this time. "Naomi, come help set the table. We're starving." I stepped out, calm and collected, my face unreadable. "Sorry, I've got work to do. You guys go ahead." I turned toward the door, slipping my bag over my shoulder. The room went silent for a beat. My dad frowned. "Work? Tonight? We just got back." "I can't afford to miss shifts," I replied smoothly, and left before they could press further. The click of the door behind me was louder than any argument I could have started. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. They expected me to fall back into place, cooking, cleaning, listening to every story from their trip as if it were sacred history. Instead, I moved like a shadow around the house. I cooked only for myself, cleaned only my space, and when they tried to corner me with tales of white sand beaches, I excused myself with a simple, "I have studying to do." The first to crack was Layla. She came into my room one evening, phone in hand, her screen flashing with endless photos. "Look," she said smugly, flipping through pictures of her in bikinis, sipping drinks by the pool, posing with strangers she'd met. "Don't you wish you'd been there?" I glanced at her screen, offered the faintest of smiles, and said softly, "No, I'm fine." Then I returned to my book. The way her face shifted, confusion, irritation, maybe even insecurity, was more satisfying than I expected. She stormed out, muttering under her breath. Soon, the whole house felt unsettled. My father grumbled about my attitude. My mother whispered to Jamal about me being ungrateful. But none of them could figure out why I wasn't begging for their attention, why I wasn't chasing scraps of love anymore. Every time I walked past them with my head high and my silence steady, I felt the balance shift. For the first time, they didn't know how to handle me. And that was exactly how I wanted it. The tension in the house had been building for weeks, like steam in a kettle waiting to whistle. Every evening, I kept to myself, reading, studying, or heading to work, while my family carried on as though nothing had happened. But the silence I wrapped myself in was louder than any argument, and I could feel their patience thinning. It finally snapped one night at dinner. I had come into the kitchen to grab a plate of food before retreating back to my room. My father, Marcus, was sitting at the head of the table with his fork in hand, watching me closely. The others were already seated, their laughter forced and brittle, as if they were trying to prove something to themselves. As I reached for a spoonful of rice, his voice boomed across the table. "Why are you acting brand new, Naomi? Huh? You think you're too good to sit with your family now?" The room fell silent. Layla froze with her phone halfway to her mouth. Jamal looked down at his plate, and my mom's eyes darted nervously between us. I set my spoon down slowly and met my father's glare. My voice was steady, low, and sharper than I intended. "Family doesn't leave one of their own behind." The words landed heavy, and for a moment no one spoke. My dad's jaw clenched. My mom shifted uncomfortably, then tried to smooth things over. "Naomi, honey," she said, her tone soft and practiced. "We thought you'd be bored on that trip. All that partying, all that energy, it's not really your style. We didn't want you to feel left out while we had fun." Her attempt at guilt washed over me like cold water. I looked at her calmly, the same way I looked at strangers who lied to my face at the cafe. "You didn't want me there because you never wanted me at all." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off with silence. I sat down at the edge of the table, scooped a spoonful of food onto my plate, and ate slowly. My composure unsettled them more than if I had screamed. I could see it in their eyes, the confusion, the discomfort, the cracks in their confidence. Jamal cleared his throat, mumbling something about his phone. Layla scrolled quickly, pretending not to hear. My dad stabbed at his steak, muttering under his breath. And my mom just kept glancing at me, as if waiting for me to cry, to apologize, to go back to being the quiet, obedient daughter they could walk over. But I didn't break. I chewed slowly, my gaze fixed on my plate, letting the weight of my silence do all the talking. By the time I stood up, leaving my half-finished meal behind, the air in the dining room was thick. No one dared stop me as I carried my plate to the sink, rinsed it, and walked away. For once, they were the ones left behind in silence. The months that followed were quiet, but not empty. I poured every ounce of energy into my studies, treating each day like a step toward a future I was building in secret. Every morning before work, I woke early, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and sat at my desk with LSAT prep books spread out like a fortress around me. Logic games, reading comprehension, analytical reasoning. What once seemed intimidating began to make sense as the days passed. I tracked my progress with notes and highlighters, marking small victories that no one but me could see. At the cafe, life took on a different rhythm. I was no longer just the quiet girl behind the counter. Slowly, I began connecting with coworkers who respected me for who I was, not for who they wanted me to be. There was Kendra, who always slipped me encouraging words when she saw me studying on break. There was Miguel, who shared tips about saving money and keeping my focus sharp. These friendships were simple, but they were genuine, and they gave me a sense of belonging I had never felt at home. Even the regular customers noticed the change. One woman, a lawyer who came in every morning for her latte, struck up conversations with me about her work. She didn't know it, but the way she spoke about her cases, her passion, and her determination fueled the fire inside me even more. By spring, I finally gathered the courage to submit my applications. I sat in front of my laptop late one night, double-checking every essay, every form, before hitting the submit button. When I finally did, my heart pounded like I had just taken the biggest leap of my life. Weeks passed, and I buried myself in work and study to keep from obsessing over the results. Then one afternoon, after a long shift at the cafe, I came home to an envelope waiting in the mailbox. My name printed neatly on the front. My hands shook as I tore it open. "Congratulations, Naomi Ellis. You have been accepted into Howard University School of Law." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes, but these weren't the tears of rejection or loneliness I had once known. These were tears of pride, of proof that I was capable of more than anyone had ever believed. I clutched the letter to my chest and let out a laugh, one that startled even me. I didn't tell my family. Not a word. They didn't deserve to know. Instead, I tucked the letter into a folder, hidden safely in my drawer, and carried on as though nothing had changed. On the outside, I was still the quiet daughter, still invisible in their eyes. But inside, I was blooming. For the first time in my life, I saw a future that didn't depend on their approval. A future where I wasn't the forgotten one at the table, but a woman with her own name, her own strength, and her own destiny. Angela set the table with unusual care that night, her voice soft where it was usually sharp. "Naomi, sweetheart, you've been so quiet lately," she cooed, sliding a dish of overcooked lasagna in front of her daughter. Naomi knew the tone. It wasn't motherly love. It was desperation disguised as tenderness. Things had shifted drastically in the household. Marcus had been let go from his finance firm 3 months earlier, and the arrogance that once coded his every word had dissolved into bitterness. Layla, who once posted filtered beach selfies from the family's luxury vacation, had quietly withdrawn from college, her Instagram suddenly silent. And Jamal? The boy who bragged about crypto gains now whispered into his phone at night, begging creditors for more time. The air in the house felt thick with failure. Naomi, however, had changed too, only in the opposite direction. While their world collapsed, she had been quietly building her own. Nights once filled with tears were now spent in study sessions. LSAT prep books spread across her bed. Her cafe paychecks, once used to buy small comforts, now went into a growing savings account. She walked with a quiet steadiness that unnerved them, like someone carrying a secret crown. Angela tried again. We've all been under stress lately. But we're still family. Family sticks together, right? She reached across the table, attempting to place a hand on Naomi's, but Naomi pulled hers back with a calm, deliberate movement. Family doesn't always stick together, Naomi said evenly, her fork tapping against her plate. Sometimes family leaves people behind. The words hung heavy. Marcus bristled, Jamal shifted uncomfortably, and Layla rolled her eyes but didn't add her usual venom. For once, the house was silent. After dinner, Angela cornered her in the kitchen. Listen, baby, she whispered, eyes wide. Your father's been struggling. Layla's taking a break from school, and Jamal, well, he made some mistakes. We need you. Just for a little while. Maybe you could contribute more, help us with bills until we get back on our feet. Naomi wiped down the counter, her movements slow, controlled. I've got my own plans, she replied. Angela blinked, caught off guard. Plans? What kind of plans? Naomi only smiled faintly, offering no explanation. The silence itself became a wall, impenetrable, leaving her mother scrambling for a foothold. That night, Naomi sat at her desk, reviewing an acceptance letter she hadn't shown anyone. The words Howard University School of Law gleamed like a promise. She didn't gloat, didn't rush to announce her victory. Instead, she folded the letter neatly, tucking it back into its envelope. Revenge didn't always come with fireworks or shouting. Sometimes it came in the form of indifference, of watching those who abandoned you beg for the very presents they once discarded. Naomi wasn't going to scream, wasn't going to break. She was simply going to let them feel what it meant to be left behind. The suitcase rested by the door, zipped and ready. Naomi stood in the hallway, her back straight, her heart beating steady. For months she had carried her secret like a flame cupped in her hands, and now it was time to let it burn. Angela noticed first. Where are you going with that? Her voice was sharp, half suspicion, half fear. Naomi didn't flinch. Washington, D.C. The words were simple, but the silence that followed them was thunderous. Marcus, sprawled in the recliner in his stained t-shirt, sat up for the first time in weeks. Layla, phone in hand, actually lowered it, her eyes narrowing. Jamal looked between his parents, searching for cues on how to react. What do you mean, DC? Marcus demanded. For what? Naomi reached into her tote bag and pulled out the thick envelope she had guarded like treasure. She placed it on the dining table, sliding it forward as if delivering evidence in court. Howard University School of Law, she said evenly. I've been accepted on scholarship. Full ride. I start next week. Angela's mouth fell open. Law school? You? How? When did this happen? Naomi met her gaze, calm and cold. While you were sipping cocktails in the Bahamas, I was working double shifts. Studying every night. Saving every dollar. She let the words settle like stones dropping into water. While you laughed at me, called me a burden, and left me behind. I was building a life. Without you. The color drained from Angela's face. Marcus looked as if someone had slapped him, his jaw tight but speechless. Layla scoffed, trying to recover the arrogance she used as armor. So what? You think you're better than us now? Naomi turned to her, a faint smile tugging her lips. No, Layla. I don't think I'm better. I just know I don't need you anymore. Jamal finally spoke, his voice low, almost pleading. Naomi, come on. We're family. You can't just walk out. She fixed her eyes on him, steady as a judge delivering a sentence. Family doesn't abandon one of their own because she doesn't fit in. Family doesn't call you dead weight. You all made your choice the night you left me behind. This is mine. She grabbed the handle of her suitcase, her movements deliberate, her shoulders squared. The silence behind her was heavy with disbelief, regret, and something like fear. No one tried to stop her, not really. They just sat there, staring as the person they underestimated most stood taller than all of them. At the door, Naomi paused. I'm not angry anymore, she said softly. I'm free. Then she stepped out, the click of the door behind her echoing like the final gavel in a trial that had taken years to reach its verdict. The air in the living room was thick, heavy with the weight of words that had already been spoken. Naomi's suitcase stood by her side, the handle gripped firmly in her hand. For once, she felt no tremor in her body, no ache in her chest. The tears that had haunted her for years were gone. She was emptied of sorrow, filled now with something cleaner, clarity. Angela was the first to break. Naomi, wait. Please don't do this. We didn't mean. Naomi's calm eyes silenced her. She didn't need to raise her voice. The strength was in her stillness, in the way she refused to bend anymore. Marcus tried next, his voice rough, desperate. You're overreacting. You can't just walk away from your own blood. Naomi adjusted the strap of her tote bag, the acceptance letter peeking out from the top. I'm not walking away from blood, she said evenly. I'm walking away from chains. Layla scoffed, but it was weak trembling. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. Naomi almost pitied her. Almost. But she knew Layla's words were nothing more than fear dressed as pride. She gave no reply. Behind them, Jamal reached out a hand, not touching, just hovering in the air as if he wanted to pull her back, but knew he couldn't. Naomi, he whispered, don't leave like this. She gave him a long look, the kind that carried years of betrayal, of being left behind, of sitting alone with a plate of cold ham while the world celebrated without her. Then she turned away. No more words were needed. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway, each one lighter than the last. The front door opened with a creak, and for a heartbeat she stood in the frame, the cool air rushing against her face. Behind her came a chorus of voices, pleading, angry, broken. But Naomi didn't falter. She stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her. The sound clicked like a lock turning, sealing her past away. The street was quiet, the winter air sharp in her lungs. She walked steadily to the bus stop, her suitcase rolling over the uneven pavement. The world felt wide, uncharted, and for the first time, it belonged to her. The bus arrived with a low hiss, doors folding open like a welcome. Naomi climbed aboard, paid her fare, and slid into a seat by the window. She set her suitcase beside her and pulled the envelope from her bag, her fingers brushing over the embossed crest of Howard University. She held it tightly, not as a fragile dream, but as a weapon she had earned, sharp and real. As the bus rumbled forward, she glanced once at the street fading behind her. No tears, no hesitation. Just quiet triumph. Naomi faced forward again, the city stretching out ahead, her heart steady. She was free at last. Do you think Naomi made the right choice by leaving her family behind? Or should she have given them another chance to make things right? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you think. And if stories like this resonate with you, don't forget to hit subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on the notification bell so you're always updated when a new story drops.